Welcome to this week's installment of Today and Tomorrow in Scottsdale with Don Henniger. I'm Don. Joining me, as always, is my consigliere, Kevin Maxwell.
Hey, Counselor. How you doing?
Doing good, Kevin. Always good when you're by my side,
Thanks,
man.
sir.
Yep, absolutely. You know, we've got a special treat today.
King.
Our guest, he's an institution in Scottsdale, involved in just about every important endeavor and group in the city for the past 3 or 4 decades, it seems like, even though he's not that old. And he's a character, too. Actually, he's one of my favorite Scottsdale people. And that would be Kurt Bruckner. Kurt, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. It's an honor and privilege to be in this room with these distinguished gentlemen.
See, that's why I like Kurt.
Right?
You know? He can lie about us all the time, can't he?
Get away with words.
Here's something I'm going to tell you about Kurt, Kevin, because I have a feeling you may not know some of this stuff. Because I was kind of blown away too. I know everybody knows that Kurt is the co-founding member of the law firm Titus Bruckner and Levine, and he's been there over 30 years. And during that time, Kurt's been as active in the community as anybody I can think of. When it comes to city official jobs in the city, he's been on the Transportation Commission, he's been on the Redevelopment Board, he's been on the Endowment Advisory Board. He's a graduate, and he's been on the board of Scottsdale Leadership. He's an alumni like you and I are, Kevin. Yep. He got the 2008 Frank W. Hodges Alumni Achievement Award. He's a member of the Charros. He's a member of the Chamber. He's been inducted into the Scottsdale History Hall of Fame, and he MCs all those dinner events every year and keeps us all on the floor laughing, doesn't he?
It's my favorite event of the year.
Absolutely. It's because of the MC, I think, actually. He supports the Scottsdale Coalition of Today and Tomorrow, for which I am forever grateful. Kurt, what have you not been on?
Well, you know, I've enjoyed being involved in different things in Scottsdale, and I've always had the feeling that you pull out of your community, then you need to put back in it.
Love it.
And I think that's kind of the way that our firm, Titus Bruckner, Spittler and Schultz, has kind of approached things. And, you know, that's what we encourage all of our younger attorneys to do the same.
Okay. You got to update me on the title of your firm.
Yes. Well, I'm proud to say, are the longest enduring law firm in Scottsdale. We're hitting our 35th anniversary. And we've seen a lot of big law firms come into town when real estate was hot.
Sure.
And then they moved back out of town when real estate wasn't. So we moved up here in 1984, and we've been in Scottsdale ever since.
You haven't. Let's talk a little bit about it. Before we get into all the current event stuff, let's get a little background on you, because a lot of people may not know kind of where you're from, where you grew up, and then basically what led you to form the law firm in the first place 30-some years ago.
Well, I'm originally from Pekin, Illinois, home of Everett McKinley Dirksen, who was a Senate Minority Leader for 20 years.
There's fame.
There's fame. And my dad was co-campaign chairman for Everett Dirksen.
No kidding.
And got me interested in politics at that point in time. Came to school out at ASU undergrad, U of A Law School, and went to work with a San Francisco firm, Firth, Varner, Blumley and Mason, and John Titus and I in '89 were young and maybe not so bright, borrowed money from our parents and said, we don't need to be with this national law firm. We can do it ourselves.
Of
and
course.
So in 1989, we started out with our own firm, and now 35 years, still standing.
Fantastic. God. And what kind of law work do you guys do? What's your specialties?
Commercial law. We do anything from real estate, corporate securities, estate planning, any kind of business law we do, and our client base is startup companies to public companies and everything in between.
That's fantastic. And how is the law business these days?
Well, you know, I'd like to think that until the world's perfect, there's always a need for lawyers. And the last time I looked out, the world wasn't perfect. So I think we will be able to have something to do over the next couple decades.
He does not remind me of being an attorney.
Not at all. Not at all.
He's too much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And has a firm grown?
We have. We've really stayed about 12 to 14. We've had many offers from outside national law firms to be acquired and downtown large firms, but we like keeping our size and being a boutique law firm and feel we represent our clients best in that fashion.
Clients valley-wide or pretty much just Scottsdale? Or how's that play out?
Valley-wide.
Valley-wide,
and a lot of times you get calls from out of state on working on different matters, but it's always interesting and there's always challenges out there. So you give it your best shot and pursue truth and justice for all of mankind.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Thank God somebody's doing it, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you balance it all? You know, you're an active attorney. You've been doing it for decades, and you're super involved in the community. How put that formula together for me? How does that work?
Well, I think if all I did was practice law, I'd get bored pretty quick.
Yeah.
I get the psychic income for being involved in different community activities, and I enjoy it. And if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't do it.
Right.
But I think it's really the psychic income that's what you remember over the years. You don't necessarily remember one closing or one litigation matter over another, but you do remember if you were involved in Scottsdale leadership when it started up or different organizations. That's when I look back and say those are things I really am proud of and have a memory fond of.
What class were you in Scottsdale leadership?
I was in class 2, but I was only 10 years old when I went in. So I was in class 2, and I had the honor of privilege of forming the Articles of Incorporation for Scottsdale leadership when Phil Carlson, of the president of the chamber, called me and says, Bruckner, I need a cheap attorney. And I said, well, what other compliment you want to give me? Yeah. What do you need, Phil? And he goes, we're going to start a new group. I go, what's it going to be called? He said, Scottsdale Leadership. I go, what's it going to do? He goes, we don't know that yet. Just form the entity. I'll tell you later. and we formed Scottsdale Leadership and filed with the IRS to get 501c3 approval. And now I don't know what year the class is in.
You want us to tell you? We can tell you if you want.
Yes.
38.
38.
Something
Well,
else,
like
isn't it?
I said, I was 10 when I went in class 2. So.
Well, you set the foundation for an organization that's become an institution in the city.
Yeah.
That's a great organization.
It's not the first time you've done that.
So, Kurt, Don and I were talking earlier, and we have a question for you. All your achievements, which is your resume in the community is like an arm length, you've never run for office. Have you ever considered it? How come?
I have considered it, and I did a lot of work with John Kyle over the years, and John had encouraged me to run for office a couple times, but it just never seemed like the right time to do it.
Really?
Yeah.
I think he'd be a heck of a mayor.
He's a great public servant. I mean, that's what we need.
He's been on all the boards and commissions. You
Yeah.
know the city inside out. What you know how people how these campaigns get started?
Right
Somebody
here.
makes a rumor.
Well, I know that this podcast here is nothing but truth and facts, so I know there won't be any rumors.
Well,
so
and
there
we've
you
got
go.
some justice in there. That's why
Yeah.
we had
There
the
you
attorney
go.
on today.
Yeah,
There
but
you
we
go.
can also look at it this way. We can call it a grassroots campaign, starting with the two of us right here.
Okay, it could be.
Right.
You never know how it starts. Give me some advice on ways that you would tell others on how they can get connected in the community, why they should, and how do you play that out in your law firm? Because I know your law firm's got a host of people that are all over the community as well, too, right?
Well, I think it goes back to, we say if you pull out of your community, you need to put back in. And I always tell, find something you're interested in, a passion. And I think that one of the first groups I got involved with was the Transportation Commission. And I had gone through class with Jamie Drinkwater, and she says, Kurt, do you want to go and have lunch with my dad? And I go, of course. So I'm sitting there with Mayor Drinkwater, and he says, Kurt, what are you interested in? And I thought, well, I used to work on a curb and gutter crew in Illinois shoveling cement. And I said, Mr. Mayor, I'm interested in transportation. He said, good, because I'm going to form a transportation commission and you're going to be the chairman. So I came back and told my wife, she goes, how'd the lunch go with the mayor? And I said, well, it went well. I'm now chairman of the transportation commission. So you got to be careful what you ask for.
Don't go to lunch too often.
Or you got voluntold.
Yes, indeed.
Definitely happens.
Indeed.
I'd be curious about, one of the things that's amazing. You're almost a walking history book. We've had longtime leaders in here before, and some who we've talked specifically about sort of some of their best memories of their involvement in Scottsdale. When you think about some of the things that you've accomplished in the community side, working for the city or working for groups in the city, what are some things that come to mind that you really cherish?
Well, one of the great memories, and we tried really hard, was Los Arcos to get the Coyotes here.
Right.
And we thought we had that deal done. We had designed a buffer park with the neighbors. We had met with the city of Phoenix to say, if you did Bank One and the Suns Arena differently, how would you do it? They said we would have never put a parking garage between the two facilities, would have made that all retail. So we had planned to put the arena in the middle and all retail around. But that deal didn't happen. But when I look back, that's when we spent about 5 years on.
Wow.
And but Sky Song turned out great. And, you know, there was a time period where they wanted to put a big Walmart in. And a number of us fought that and were successful in not getting Walmart. But Sky Song, that's kind of a memory. Spent a lot of time on that. And the at that time, the redevelopment board, which I was on, was looking. We had a handshake deal with Smithsonian to come in the Galleria, and we're going to do a bridge and make water features where the canal bank is now, because the town of Gilbert had got a tax loophole that if you had a water treatment, you could get tax benefits. So that was voted down by the voters, and that was going on at the same time the Los Arcos was. So when I look back on some projects worked on, those bring back some memories. And, you know, it's like any projects. You got your wins and your defeats, but, you know, you gave it your best shot. You feel good about it.
Yeah. So how close did we come on the Los Arcos deal? How close did that come?
Well, I think it came really close. I remember getting a call from a client who is a broker where the land went. And he says, Kurt, I know you've been working on this deal for 5 or 6 years. They want to meet with us in Glendale, but I think it's just going to be to negotiate against the city of Scottsdale. I don't think they're coming out. And it was just a matter of a few days, weeks, that deal went over to Glendale. And I remember thinking at the time, Glendale really wanted to have that entity, and I wasn't confident the numbers were going to work out. And as it turned out, that did not work out. Yeah. So, but they had a good, strong client base, the Coyotes in the East Valley. And when they left the East Valley, I think that definitely hurt them.
And now they're looking to come back.
Yes.
You know, I don't know if Scottsdale's on the drawing board or not. I guess they're looking at Mesa right now as a serious site, but Scottsdale's been in the conversation
and
too.
The Indian community, I think, still could surface at some point.
Yeah, you never know. If you had Linda and Via de Ventura out there, the Via de Ventura and the freeway, there's a lot of stuff going on out there. You know, a lot of land out there too.
Yeah, didn't Mayor Ortega say that there was no place for them, and they weren't really interested in that?
Well, in Scottsdale, but not necessarily on the res.
Right now, yeah, I know.
Yeah. So, but I don't think I guess there's no place in Scottsdale. There's not a whole lot of empty land parcels left that could accommodate that either in the city proper. Interesting. Talk about some of the leaders you've encountered in Scottsdale over the years. You've been whether it's in the private or public sector. Who are some of the leaders that come to mind that you maybe beyond the usual suspects like Mayor Drinkwater? Who comes to mind that's really made a positive impact for the city in ways that maybe people don't know about?
Well, I think one of the leaders that I really cherished the time with him was Senator Kyle. And I got involved in his campaign early on. He had asked me to be his chief of staff. I regret that I never did that. At that time, our family was young, and I wasn't making much money, and I'd even make less money.
Right.
And Sarah Kell always gives me a hard time. He says, "You're the only person I offered a job to who turned me down." But I said, I'd take it now in a heartbeat. But certainly... Senator Kyle, who we would get to come to Scottsdale leadership events and chamber events, and he was always willing to do so. Mayor Lane, good friends with Jim, and Jim, I think, has devoted 16 years to helping out the city of Scottsdale, and Linda Mulhaven, who put in all of her years.
Yeah, that's right.
Is doing just a lot of people, Sam Campana and Mary Manrose, and got to work with all of them, and they all, contributed in their ways and all had their different styles, but they all had the best for Scottsdale in their hearts. And you can argue with someone to say maybe you should have done it one way versus another, but they all certainly had best intentions and did an outstanding job.
It was a different time back then. People could actually talk to each other.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't agree on things, you could at least talk to each other. And boy, that's not happening very much these days, is it?
I always tell my kids, I said, I'm glad I grew up in a kinder, gentler time. And I had lunch with Senator Kyle after he filled in for Senator McCain. And he had made those comments too, going back to D.C., that things were just getting a little tougher to deal with people.
And that was what,
and that
5
was-
years ago?
Yeah, and that was just for the short period of time
Yeah.
since he had stepped down to when he stepped in for Senator McCain's seat.
And it's blown up big time since then, obviously,
Yeah.
and in every way. And it's something that's concerning. And it boils down. It's not just a federal deal. It boils all the way down to the local politics, whether it's school board stuff, city council stuff. It's just become contentious across all levels.
Yeah, it's too bad.
It's hard to find people to put their hand up and say, "I'm going to run for office these days," because you look what you're getting into, right?
Yeah, and it's the great thing about Scottsdale is there are so many people committed to the city. I had a good friend who passed away, and I was following up and seeing how his wife was doing, and she said, everyone in this town really cared about my husband when he passed, and they've reached out to me and made it so much more comfortable to get through that. And I think that's one of the things that Scottsdale prides itself on is people backing each other and having pride in their city and wanting to help their fellow citizens.
It's one of the things that drives us on this podcast. We've done a whole bunch of podcasts now. We're getting close to number 100, and it's all about positive developments and positive people in Scottsdale because you know what? There's an endless supply of them, and people forget that.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes to see that through the noise and the clutter that's out there.
And people, as our audience grows and we get more down the line, people are calling us up and they say, well, we sure would like to be a guest on the podcast, but it's not always a good fit.
Right.
Because our criteria is you have to be providing something good to the community and, as Kurt said, giving back. And if you're coming up short on that a little bit, even though you might be a great person and good at what you do, if you're not contributing to the community in a positive way, that's who our audience wants to hear from.
Totally right. And it doesn't mean we can't take a look in the mirror and look for ways that we can improve our community and critique our community, but we do it in the positive way.
And there's a lot of people doing that, Don, already, right? Don't you think?
Sure.
That's what makes us unique and different. There's so many people who are already doing that.
Yep.
I just think that we need to talk about more positive stuff, and we're doing a great job of doing that.
Well, I think a perfect example of that occurred within the last couple of years on the Prada Parade.
Yeah.
That had been run by the JCs, and then when the parade wasn't being run by the JCs, they asked the Charros to step up and work in it. And the Charros did, and we reached out to Scottsdale leadership who's helped out. We reached out to the young professionals within the chamber who reached out. And so there's an example of three groups, the Charros, the chamber, and Scottsdale leadership working together on a parade. And I think there's many opportunities to get groups such as those and Scott and other great groups in the community that we could all roll in the same direction. And sometimes, everyone's kind of got their little bit of turf of what they see as their area of expertise, which is fine because one group can't handle everything. But to take all those different groups and get them rowing in the same direction, I think is something that the city can strive for. And I think there'll be opportunities moving forward to be able to do so.
You've given me that advice many times, and I totally agree with it. It's harder to do, though. It's harder to bring people, even when you agree on issues, it's just harder to kind of get everybody under the same tent. And if anybody out there has ideas on how we can do that, I think it would be a much better city if we could all sort of come together and speak with a unified voice on issues that are really important to our city.
Yeah, no, and I think there's opportunities to do so. And Don, you've done a great job with Scott, having them be able to carve out to speak on behalf of the community, to train people running for city council, to bring diverse groups on the bond issues together. And I think you don't get enough credit for all you've done to bring those groups together.
I like it behind the scenes,
But I'll back Kurt on that. Here. You need more recognition for what you do.
Well, it's all about educating and the community and building relationships, and that's the bread and butter of what makes a place tick, right? Good relationships and people who know what's going on in the community. So, how do you educate people, and how do you build relationships that are healthy and productive, and people working with each other? Well,
And the ones that are the minority dissidents seem to get the most recognition at times, and that can be frustrating. But the good charge has to keep moving forward.
And I keep doing that for sure. So you obviously are bullish on the city. Give us a couple ideas of why you're optimistic about the city's future in ways that we haven't maybe talked about yet.
Well, I think the people on the council, the city council, the mayor, I think they're all have Scottsdale's interest best in mind, and they may approach things different, and reasonable minds can differ on how best to approach things. But I think the city as a whole, its business leaders are very positive. The cachet, I was listening to one of your other podcasts, and people were talking about the cachet that Scottsdale has.
Yep.
And it does. And when I'm traveling in places, a lot of people say, where are you from? They say Phoenix. I always say Scottsdale.
Yeah, right.
Because I think there is a difference between Phoenix and Scottsdale and the cachet. And I think, just on development issues, Scottsdale certainly needs to continue development. And I think it's important, as people have said, we want to do it the right way. We don't want to say no to all development. We don't want to say yes to all development. But there does need to be some development, and it does need to be in the proper context. And I think Scottsdale has done a good job in doing that.
Good point. Good point.
Did you see where, I just got talking about how positive we are, but did you see in Gilbert where they're having to hire a mediator to come in and work with all the individual council members because they don't get along with one another?
Not talking to each other?
No, not talking to each other, and they're not communicating. And the city had to hire a mediator to come in and do conflict resolution with each individual council member. So, I don't, I hope we don't come to that. I don't think we will, because as Curtis said, I think that all of our council members, although we may disagree with them sometimes, I think they have the best, in the heart for the city. But it goes on in a lot of places, doesn't it?
Not just city council, but look at the school board situation.
Right.
All the way down to school board levels. And people forget about, there's those, the most important organizations in terms of government are right at the local level.
Yeah.
And if people there can't get along in their own communities and they need conflict resolution just to sit on the council together, that's a scary thought.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, anyway.
And the worst thing you can do is get some bottom-feeding, blood-sucking attorneys involved. Come on.
They're ready, aren't they?
We don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. Stay away from those people.
Kurt, what do you do for fun?
For fun, I enjoy spending time with family. Sue and I are coming up on... we just had 40-year anniversary. We've got 3 kids. 2 live in Austin, but Austin lives in Scottsdale. Yeah. So we have 3 kids. They're all doing great. 2 grandkids that we saw in Oregon just a couple of weeks ago. So enjoy family time, spending time with that. Enjoy traveling. Get up to Strawberry where I can see Kevin every now and then.
We bump into each other,
yeah. And, so but you just you need a reason to get up in the morning.
There you
go. And I've talked to some of my friends that have considered retiring and things, and, they retire and then they call me and say, hey, Bruckner, I need an LLC because I'm going to start consulting now.
Yeah.
So they want to get back in the game. They want to stay in the game. So you got to be in the game. You got to have a reason to get up in the morning, and you got to... I remember I had a high school teacher that always said you need an aim, goal, and a purpose. And that, and at the time you thought, oh my God, is she going to say that again?
Please.
But that does still play true.
Yeah, she's right. Yeah. How many Charro rides have you been on?
A few, but I've kind of now more going up for the days.
Okay.
And then a little less camping out, but still enjoy with the camaraderie and going up.
Well, you've been a key component there. I think you're still on the Charros Foundation board, too, aren't you?
I'm still on the Charros Foundation board, and it was a great spring training, and we're able to donate significant dollars to a lot of Scottsdale charities.
I think he's a role model leader for right?
I have one more question for you, Kurt, on a personal level. So as far as the legal work goes, are you kind of throttling down a little bit? Are you getting close to retirement? Are you still going to be doing it?
No, I'm still going full bore and still enjoy it. And, I not a person that just had tons of hobbies, and been involved by family,
I've seen him on the golf course a few times.
Yeah, a few and all that, but I got tired of shooting under par. So, I said that quit being a challenge. So I got to try something else, maybe it'd be, trick riding a pony or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Give me a challenge, right?
Yeah, give me a challenge.
That's fantastic. Well, Kurt, you're a tremendous asset to our community, and a good friend to everybody. You've been involved in so many different causes, and I know you still have a long way to go to continue making a difference in Scottsdale. We sure appreciate that.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on this podcast. I've listened to several of them, and you do a great job and a great great service. And Scott has been a super organization for our community. And Don, you've been the laboring oar. And without Scott, there would be no Scott. Believe me.
That's right.
Thank you for everything you've done.
Well, thank you, Kurt. You're an inspiration, and you're a big supporter for all of us, and we sure appreciate that. And thanks to all of you for listening. We're going to see you next week for another edition of Today and Tomorrow in Scottsdale.